Hey, Janice.
Hey, Anthony.
Let's talk today about 7 tips for how to ask for a raise at work. So right now, I think everyone agrees the economy is pretty hot. It's kind of on fire. But has that been reflected in your paycheck recently? I mean, not yours, Janice, but the listener.
Not
Yeah.
mine in particular, but no. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, things are moving. We're in a good spot. I mean, gas is low. It's good.
Right. I mean, I just want to make sure that everyone's getting their piece of the pie. And if you're in an employment, if you're an employee in a company or in a corporation, here are some tips and tactics. These are very general on how to make sure that you're getting paid appropriately and how to ask for that raise. Now, this is going to be, Janice, this is going to be a high level conversation because I will be interviewing an expert, my wife actually, on a
Oh,
similar topic very shortly.
very fun.
Cool. So number one, first tip on how to ask for a raise for work. Ask now, only because it might take a while. I think we're in a culture where we're used to immediate results, but some of the best things, you need to be patient. It's more of a process, right? Before you can get that goal that you're looking for. So rather than having this mentality that, oh, okay, I'm going to work up the courage to approach my boss and ask them for the raise, you know, don't expect it to be a yay, nay, flip of a switch type of occurrence. It will be more of a process and more of maybe a campaign if you want to think of it that way. Does that make sense, Janice?
Yeah, that's actually a good way to look at it. Like
Yeah.
you're going towards something and you need to start building it up now.
So don't wait for example, your annual performance review to bring it up. Like, think prospectively. Start mapping it out, maybe even as far out as a year before, talking about. So hey boss, I've never been in this situation.
Hey,
Hey
boss.
boss, hey jefe, whatever.
Hey, you.
Over the next 6 months, what do you expect of me, and what can I do above and beyond that? That'll impress you, right? And then the boss will say, okay, do X, Y, and Z. That's your job. That's what we're paying for you now. But if you do A, B, and C, then that'll kind of blow my socks off. And I'm like, okay, cool. If I do those within this time frame, what do I get? What are you going to do
Right.
for me? Right?
What's in it for me?
Yeah,
Yes.
map it out. And this actually ties back into our previous talk about the 6 principles of influence. This one ties into the principle of consistency. If you get your boss to commit and to say what he will do, if this happens, when you put that back in front of him later, he will feel psychologically compelled to follow through, even if things are tough for him, even if it's hard for him to ask his boss or his comptroller for the funds to do it. There will be a psychological compulsion for him to follow through, to be consistent with his own words. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as a boss, I would really like if someone came to me in advance instead of
Yeah.
just saying, hey, I'd like a raise. They'd say, what can I do, like you said, to knock your socks off? And I would probably think, wow, okay. Look, we're working for it and
That's a
towards it.
great point. That's a great point. It reflects well on you. It gives everyone a way to. I think it's a great way to set it up for sure. All right.
Absolutely.
Cool. Number 2 tip for how to ask for a raise at work. You need to know what you're worth. You need to know the market. This is very similar to the stuff we talk about, Janice, about home buying. You can't just go in and say, okay, I'll pay $1 million for this house when it's obviously by market comparables worth 2 million, right?
Correct.
Similarly, you can't go into your boss, or not you can't. I guess you could and get laughed out of the office.
Good. But
You shouldn't
not
go
really
in
planned out.
demanding. Yeah, you shouldn't go in demanding $150,000 for a job that the market pays 75 for. You need to know what the market pays. That feels like common sense, yeah.
It does, but you're not really thinking of that maybe necessarily. But look, like the market in New York versus the market in, the verbs might be a little bit different. Do a little bit of homework.
So a couple tools that we've looked up that could be useful. There's PayScale. There's LinkedIn's salary tool, I guess, and Glassdoor has a sub-site called Know Your Worth. And also, I mean, not everything can be done on Google or the internet. Ask your friends. Ask your counterparts in other companies, and just get a sense of what you should be getting paid. It won't be so scientific that you'll know down to the penny, but you'll definitely get a range at least. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not only just knowing what you're, what it's out there, what other people are making, you also have to know that you're worth it. I know I struggled with this originally, setting rates. And I don't know if you have too, but when you know that the market is making, let's say, I don't know, $10 an hour, and you know that you're worth that and you should definitely be making that, don't go in for 9 just because you're not sure if you're really worth it. Stick with it, just know it and know that what you're doing is it's a mental component. I think that some people do struggle with when they ask for raises.
That definitely ties into how to negotiate. That's a great point. Knowing the market, though, is not just about knowing what your peers are making. It's also knowing how the economy or market is doing in general. For example, in 2019, the average salary is expected to rise about 3.1%. So keep that in mind. If they're offering you a 1% cost of living increase, you can kind of point to that. Hey, everyone else is getting 3% cost of living increase. Why is mine so low, right? So generally, unless you're looking for a major promotion, asking for a 5% bump this year is probably in the realistic ballpark. That's 3% cost of living plus 2% because you're great. I don't know.
Because you're great. Because you're worth it. That's what I mean. You got to just go with it.
Cool. Number 3 tip, despite what we just told you about looking at looking for marketplace information, do not directly compare yourself to your peers and coworkers. Okay, Janice, how would you feel? How would it come off to you if your employees approached you and said, "Hey, I need to be making more because Sally is making more than me"?
Right.
How did you like my impression?
Well thought out plan. So go back a few minutes ago when you just said you've got this plan. How can I work harder? So in the future, I'll get that raise. And then you have somebody else that walks in and says, well, Sally Mae is getting $4 more. And not so much. I
mean, the first approach, the one we described earlier, comes off as very professional, plan-oriented, goal-oriented. The second approach, a little bit more awkward socially because it puts the boss in a tough spot, a little bit more gossipy, and definitely on the petty side. Yeah,
totally agree with you.
All right, so don't do that.
Just don't. How about just don't? Just right. Take that off the plate.
Okay, number 4 tip for how to ask for a raise: don't just go in and ask. Raise your profile, meaning make it feel like make them want to give you a raise. Right? Make yourself indispensable. Take initiative beyond your role. Don't ask for a raise just because you've been doing your job. Do more. Go beyond your role. Mentor others. Be reliable. I mean, I guess that's kind of basic. This one goes against a lot of people's nature, but announce your wins. You got to be a little self-promoting, right?
Yes, hard to do, but very important. And I've also, you hear the phrase like, well, that's not my job, to make sure that the desk is cleaned up or the trash isn't taken out. How many times have you heard that? That's not my job. That's not my job. Well, of course, it's not your job to take your trash out in your cubicle. But, when you leave at the end of the night, you've went above just a little bit to make it nice and neat. And I mean, think about that. Then your boss walks by and, wow, look at that. So you kind of have to move beyond that it's not my job role, mentality, just to do that little tiny bit extra.
So I have a funny story. I know a young lady whose boss asked her to, prepare this X, Y, and Z report. And her response was, that's a $50,000 a year task. That's not what I make yet, meaning.
Okay. Very creative. I guess that would depend on the rapport you have with the boss.
I don't remember how that shook out, but I just know that
I'd love to know how that worked. Yeah. But that would have been a good place for her to say, you know what? It's kind of beyond my pay grade, but I would love to try. Let's see how it goes.
But her answer was funnier. It was much sassier.
That was good. That was funny.
So the bottom line is, when you walk into the meeting, when you bring up your request for a raise, the goal, because of all this prep that you've done, because of all this above and beyond that you've demonstrated, you want your boss to be not only surprised that you're not making more, you want them to be shocked and horrified. Like, oh my goodness, that's what you're getting paid? I need to get you a raise. That would, that's a little over the top, but that would be a great goal to have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Number 5, tips for about how to ask for a raise. Ask in person. I know a lot of folks have trouble with conflict or just negotiations in general. And there's a strong temptation to hide behind email. Don't do it. Do this in person. Do you agree, Janice?
I do. I also agree. It's sometimes easier to write an email, just kind of let it go, and you don't have to face it. You can kind of hide, but it's not as effective. It's not going to work like it is if you, like we've been talking about, you walk in, you sit down with the boss and get his facial expressions and get some feedback.
So yeah, that's a huge factor as to why it's so important. As first of all, like we said, this is a campaign, not a yay or nay thing. It's not like the emperor doing a thumbs up or thumbs down. You need to sort of read the situation, read his body language, his reactions, and you can't do that by email. You need to read the terrain and adjust accordingly. And in the worst case scenario, if it's a no, for now at least, if it's a current no, you'll be able to probe and find out, what can be done or how strong of a no it is. Really, that gets lost in email. Yeah.
It does. It does. And you know what? When you communicate with anyone electronically, whether it's email or text message or what have you, a lot of things get lost in translation. You can think, oh my gosh, that person is so mad at me, when really they just put one extra exclamation point and they didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So you do lose that in translation. And, if you get a no back, maybe he's just saying, I'm really busy, I'm on the train, I'm just giving you a quick no. Yeah. But then you thought, oh, my dreams are crushed and everything. So you lose all of that. And it's just, there's so many things that can be misconstrued in an email.
Absolutely. Tip number 6, how you go about asking. So a few of these are related to what we just talked about. Why don't you provide metrics of examples of your accomplishments, meaning numbers-based, profit-based, savings-based numbers that show that relate to things that you've done. Also, point out recent wins that you've had for the company, and this all ties into the self-promotion thing we talked about earlier. But what I really want to point out is focus on why you deserve more money, not why you need more money. Okay.
Interesting.
I've heard so many stories about this. Don't go into your boss saying, "I need a new car," or my landlord is threatening to kick me out because I'm behind on rent.
Yeah, I need to pay my rent.
That is not a strong approach. I mean, that puts the landlord, I mean, not the landlord, your boss in a really...
The landlord, the boss, they're all in, yeah.
They're all the enemy. In a very awkward spot. And honestly, what does it have to do with them? Are you begging for a handout, or are you earning more money, right? Those are two pretty different things. All right. Finally, number 7, the final tip on how to ask for a raise. Follow up. Like we said, this is not a one-shot, zero-sum approach. It's a campaign. Unless you're grossly underpaid, unless you are shockingly underpaid, most changes will take a while. Your boss will have to talk to his boss and to the CFO or the whoever's in charge of budgeting to make sure there are funds to pay you more, and to make sure that it doesn't knock you out of line with your peers or things like that. So don't get discouraged if you don't get an immediate answer. It will take a little bit of time. Now, the reason you need to follow up, Janice, is you have to know, everyone needs to realize nobody's thinking about you and your problems nearly as much as you are. Like, not even close.
Right. Of course, you're
That's
thinking
why
about
they're your
you.
problems.
Right.
So unless you're reminding folks, and hopefully you're not pestering them, but reminding folks, hey, it's been about a week, I just want to check in. Where are we at with what we talked about? As opposed to every day. Did I get my raise yet?
Right. Every hour on the hour, you're sending an email. But no, this does take time. Think of all the red tape that you would have to go through. Even if your boss says, sure, I'd love to give you a raise, he's probably got 15 people above him and beside him that he has to go through and make it work and approve it. And it definitely could take a while.
So just make sure you're patient about it. Don't be afraid to follow up. Don't think that don't think that if they forget about it, it means that it's not happening or they don't like you. People get busy. And again, your problems are not really their problems. I mean, I hate to be so blunt about it, but it's kind of the reality of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Ever send an email, no one ever replies back just to find out they never got it in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, that's very good point.
Right? How many times did that happen? Or I think even you and I've marked something on red and you said, did you see that? No. Well, yeah, that's
it
right.
Happens.
But
it happens.
It does happen. So you never know, that first time you followed up, they may not have gotten in the first place.
Yeah. All right. So those are our 7 tips about how to ask for a raise. Hope you found that useful. We'll be diving into this topic a little bit more as well. Help you all with your careers. Until then, thank you, Janice, and thanks you all for listening. Take care.
Bye-bye.